This is when Amnesty International was calling him the worst human rights violator in the world and so on, but nobody covered him. He was our man, he was benevolent, he was wonderful, and the torture of Iranians is fine. As soon as the overthrow of the Shah took place, the U.S. quickly moved to undermine the new regime. This is before it had turned to real harshness and brutality. Carter, who was president, sent a NATO general, Robert Heuser, to Iran to try to see if he could work out relations with the Iranian military, who were very close to the Pentagon, to overthrow the new government. Well, that didn't work. Shortly after that began the supply of weapons to Iran, funded by the United States. It went through Israel with Saudi funding. Now, that wasn't to strengthen Iran. You provide weapons to a country if you want the government overthrown. It's a standard procedure for overthrowing a civilian government. Establish contacts. They already had contacts. Strengthen the contacts with the military. They are the ones who can overthrow the government. And that was perfectly frank and open. I mean, in fact, the Israeli ambassador to the United States spoke about it openly. He said, you know, we want to establish a strength. They already had close relations, we want to strengthen relations with the military, because then they can overthrow the government. In fact, the State Department told him to shut up because they didn't want this said. Meanwhile, the Israeli, he wasn't called an ambassador, the effective ambassador to Iran under the Shah, Uri Labrani. Israel had very close relations with the Shah. So Uri Labrani gave a talk over BBC in which he said, if we can find elements in the military which are willing to shoot down 10,000 people in the streets, we'll be able to overthrow the government. That's why we're agreeing to send them weapons, Saudi funding, U.S. backing. Well, that was exposed inside Iran by, I think, 1984 or so. They had Iranian intelligence that exposed the contacts and dismantled them. Shortly after that, almost immediately, it came the arms shipments under what was called the arms for hostage deal. I don't think it had anything to do with hostages. This began before there were any hostages. In fact, the first hostages in Lebanon were Iranian. Nobody protested about that. I suspect this was just a continuation of the former programs. And then, that was exposed and became a scandal and so on. Meanwhile, the U.S. was supporting Iraq's invasion of Iran, which was no small affair, I don't have to tell you. The United States supported it throughout. Saddam Hussein became a favorite. In 1982, Reagan took Iraq off the list of states supporting terror so that the U.S. could start providing him with very badly needed support. It included arms, but also agricultural products and others that were badly needed. Donald Rumsfeld went and shook his hand and so on. In fact, the U.S. basically won the war for Iraq.
Yeah, he said that the enemy of our enemy. Yeah. He said, I think Rumsfeld said that the enemy of our enemy is our friend.
But then toward the end of the war, it was a pretty close affair. There was a lot of slaughter, massacre, and atrocities and so on. But by the end, the United States Navy simply entered the war to protect Iraqi any ships, that were breaking the Iranian blockade. And it was no small matter. In fact, the commitment of the United States to Iraq was shown by the fact that Saddam Hussein was given a privilege that no other country in the world has outside of Israel. He was permitted to attack a U.S. warship with Exocet missiles and kill a couple of dozen American soldiers. Nobody gets away with that. I mean, Israel did it in the case of the Liberty, a special case. He was able to do that with impunity. Then came the Vincennes incident, when the USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian commercial airliner, killing 290 people in commercial airspace. They claimed it was an accident, maybe it was, but they were praised for it. You know, the events then came back, and George Bush, president, later praised them, gave them medals. You know, so that essentially told the Iranian leadership, look, we can't fight the United States. I think they sank about half the Iranian Navy at that time, which wasn't much. And so they essentially capitulated. U.S. support for Saddam Hussein continued. Didn't end at the end of the war. In fact, it expanded. In 1989, President Bush now invited Iraqi nuclear engineers to the United States for advanced weapons training and nuclear weapons production. This was going to be their base for their power, Saddam Hussein. Iran had to notice that. Meanwhile, you know, then Saddam invaded Kuwait. They didn't like that, and things changed. But meanwhile, Iran was almost immediately under sanctions, and the sanctions remained. They were harsh, and then coming up to the present, just if you think it through, since 1953, there has not been a moment when the United States has not been torturing the Iranian people, whatever the circumstances. And now the hostility is avert. Well, that doesn't help. There's more to it than that. I mean, there is a way of dealing with the nuclear crisis, let's say, a very good way, and that's to establish a nuclear weapons-free zone in the region. The United States is committed to this, and Britain is committed to it. When there was a Security Council resolution, I think it was 687 in 1991, which was directed against Iraq. It said Iraq has to eliminate its weapons of mass destruction. You read that resolution, Article 14 says the U.S. and all states are committed to establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the region. Well, the U.S. and Britain are particularly committed to that because they appealed to that resolution when they're trying to provide a legal cover for their invasion of Iraq. And nobody will report this, but yeah, that's true. So what would happen if that were done? Well, you know, that would mitigate, maybe end any nuclear weapons crisis. The American people are strongly in favor of that. The Iranian people are strongly in favor of that. The government officials supports it. Of course, that would mean that Israel would have to abandon its nuclear weapons. So therefore, it's not even on the agenda. But that's a very sensible policy, very strong support all over the world, even a large majority of Americans, which would limit, mediate the crisis. And in other ways, it's possible.
Just one more question. That is, as you know, the Chinese Communist Party newspaper claimed last week that the United States used online warfare to stir up unrest in Iran after last year's election. Hitting back at Hillary Clinton's speech a week before that about internet freedom. What do you read from this? Are they accusing the U.S. because they are on the same boat and controlling the media and running their countries with non-elected officials? Or there is some fact and truth in this statement?
Probably a little bit of each. I mean, it would clearly be in the interest of the Chinese government to level such a charge. So you sort of have to discount it for that reason. On the other hand, it wouldn't be surprising if it was true. In fact, I would guess that it probably is true. How much of an effect that had, I don't know, maybe nothing. But it would be surprising if the United States was not trying to stir up trouble within Iran. In fact, we know the United States has been supporting, we're pretty sure at least, that it's been supporting insurrectionist movements and terrorist groups and others. It would be a natural thing to do.
But there is a very complex situation that Iranian, I think, trapped in this situation. On one hand is the enemies and past the history of the being under control of the U.S. interests and doing everything that they want. And the other hand is just their freedom. They are suffering from the dictatorship regime that...
They should get help from wherever they can.
Yes.
So that's that difficult line that they have to walk.
Yes.
They have to recognize the United States as it's not a group of missionaries, you know, hoping to bring peace and justice to the world. It's a powerful state which acts in its own interests. We know that the interests of the United States have not been to help the people of Iran. We were half a century of evidence for that, if you needed any, and the same is true elsewhere. On the other hand, the U.S. will support the dissident groups in enemy states. For example, it supported democracy and freedom in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, it was crushing it in El Salvador and Guatemala. Yes, that's the way states behave.
Okay. I know you are busy and have a busy schedule. Thank you so much for your time, and it was nice talking with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.